Sweden is part of the Security Council at the United Nations in these moments in which Donald Trump is, on the one hand, saying that the United Nations is not important, that multilateral agreements are not that he's not going to be following the rule of law of the international order. What is Sweden going to push in the Security Council as your agenda?
Yeah, let me first say that Sweden is a great supporter of the United Nations, and together with Mexico, we have been a leader in the United Nations for many years. And then we're not talking only about the Security Council, but the United Nations as a whole. And this is going to be very important in the coming years, because we see more challenges now to the international system, not the least because the different superpowers pursue more of their national agenda, and that makes it even more important for countries like Sweden and Mexico to pursue a value-based agenda, an agenda that preserves and strengthens the United Nations and the international law and rules that we have built up since 1945, and has put the foundation in place for the world order that we do have. In the Security Council, Sweden is then a non-permanent member this year and next year, and we chair the month of January, and it was, for example, it was very successful in terms of discussing conflict prevention and putting that on the table. It's where we also had the support from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and other issues. What is important is we often think that the UN Security Council cannot really function because the great powers cannot agree on how to solve large crises and conflicts in the world. And of course, Syria is a horrible example here, both a huge political and humanitarian crisis, but we can also see that in other cases where the Security Council can agree, as for example in terms of mediation in the Gambia, in West Africa during the month of January, the Security Council was able to agree, and then they were able to contribute to a solution. So we have to remember that as well. Another issue that was very important for Sweden is to put the role of women and children on the agenda, and especially women's role in equal representation of women, for example, in the mediation of conflicts, which is very important.
Yeah, another issue that maybe Sweden has a common objective with Mexico, because they, as you said, they share many goals on global climate change, on non-proliferation, on disarmament, but also on the reform of the United Nations. And you mentioned that there are some problems with the Security Council. One of those problems is the veto power that still have Russia, the United States, China, and the 5 permanent members. What is the position of Sweden on reforming the United Nations? Because that's also an issue that is going to be discussed in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yes, well, the reform of the Security Council has been on the agenda since the 1970s, and yes, it is true that the Security Council reflects the victory powers after World War II, and yes, Sweden has for a long time, together with Mexico, worked on reforming the Security Council so that it would be would mirror more the situation we have today in the world and be more equal. And also we are not that fond of the veto power in general, because of course it makes it much more difficult to solve large conflicts and crises. So that is still on the agenda. But what is important is that the United Nations is not only the Security Council. There are so many specialized agencies. There is the General Assembly, which is democratic, one country, one vote, and a lot of this work will continue, the expert work on the ground and by the specialized agencies.
Sure.